This is The Art of Startup War, and I am your sensei, Brian Mac Mahon. Now, in Season 1 and 2, I got inside the minds of startup investors. In Season 3, I brought in entrepreneurs to share their startup journey. Here, in Season 4, we combine both so you can hear investors critique the investment value proposition of individual companies. You're going to hear how investors make decisions to invest in startups, what makes a great entrepreneur, and how billion-dollar companies are built. So tune in every Tuesday, 10 a.m. on all the major platforms. You can empower your tribe by sharing the podcast, and remember to subscribe, rate, review, and leave us a comment. Good morning, it's Brian. You are back on The Art of Startup War. Today we are going to speak with another phenomenal investment that we've made at Expert Dojo here into an incredible entrepreneur who is changing the way companies deal with their systems. Actually, I will even go one step further. He is eradicating fear from inside the information department in large companies because they are terrified of everything that they are exposed to right now from an information perspective. What do you think, Michael? Is that close?
Yeah, it's really about handling risk and compliance. Those are the issues.
I love it. You just come straight out of the gates. You're like, yeah, you got it. So the company, by the way, for everybody listening, is CloudNine.ai. And CloudNine.ai are a massively deep enterprise technology company that go right into the core systems of how some of the biggest companies in the world operate. And what's going to fascinate you on this show today is understanding the unbelievable complex problems that are being faced by these Fortune 500 companies. You would think, oh man, these large companies are huge. It's easy. They're going to be able to have these systems and loads of people, so everything is simple. And actually, it's not. They have bigger problems than smaller companies do because they have years of legacy, multiple systems operating on top of each other, government legislation coming in every single year with something new which is impossible to comply with. And that is what Cloud9.ai attack directly. Yes or no?
Yeah, exactly. Brian.
That's why we invested, man. I should know it, right? Because I got excited at this at the start because I didn't realize at the beginning. And we're like, well, look, we deal with cybersecurity and deep enterprise tech all the time and invest in them. But it wasn't until you spoke to me about, and you gave me an example of a company that would have acquired, say, 6, 7, 10, 50, 70, 100 other companies over a period of 10, 15, 20, 40 years. 400 years, right? Mm-hmm. And then over that period of time, each one of those companies all ran their own systems, probably entirely different from the other systems that the other companies used. So suddenly this large company, this Nokia, this Microsoft, this Sun Microsystems has got 50, 60, 70 company systems that they have to somehow integrate into their own system, which is, I was going to say it's almost impossible, but it's actually impossible, right?
Well, it's become extremely complicated just because, as I mentioned, they have a tremendous amount of risk and they also have to follow so many compliance issues. These organizations are global organizations, so they have to follow data privacy and data compliance issues for the 200 countries that they currently operate in. I mean, if you take a look at the issues revolving around Cambridge Analytica, where they basically exposed everyone's data to everyone without any rules. And so a lot of the data privacy rules that are in place are really to protect individuals and to protect, or actually to keep organizations from letting these algorithms just go wild. So what we're operating and what we're doing is actually helping these organizations reduce their risk and compliance for global requirements. And
I want to unpack this even on, because I'm a simple man,
yeah,
right? And even as I started to understand the enormity of what you were doing is when you said to me one very simple phrase. You said, the reason companies will never be able to solve, whether it's the compliance issues that you're talking about, or even whether it's internally making sure that their systems work properly, right? The reason they will never be able to fix it is because they currently run the system as many to one, i.e., if you have 300,000 people in your organization, all 300,000 people are reliant on the one making sure that all of the systems go out to them. And how you approach it over at Cloud9 is that you make it so that each individual person that's using the system, or each individual employee, is actually the one. It's all about making them the central core part, and everything becomes a service of that. Can you maybe speak in a way that everybody's going to understand about how you are re-engineering these entire systems to work better, stronger, faster?
Well, you brought up a couple of points. You kind of have to unpack that a little bit. So, the purpose of using AI within the organization is actually to make things cheaper and faster, right? That's the whole purpose of AI. There's three things that we're really
And
good.
AI being artificial intelligence, for the
Correct.
few people who don't know that.
Correct. And so the three things that we're really good at we're solving mathematical problems, right? The other one is solving complicated programming problems, right? Programming is just math, right?
Yeah.
The third thing that we solve are analyzing complex data sets, right? And the third portion is probably the most important, dealing with enterprises, because they're dealing with complicated data sets. When I mean complicated data sets, I'm talking about PDF files, right? PDF files or
Well, why is a PDF complicated?
well, because it's considered unstructured data, and so
Oh, right.
those PDF files, if you're looking at a hospital record or a bank record or a mortgage record, or if you've paid your last mortgage bill, there's so much information on that PDF file. And if you take a look at another component within banking, checks, right? We're now using photographic checks and depositing them. We're actually the only country in the world that still uses checks. If you talk to a college kid,
That's amazing, by the way.
yeah,
This is incredible.
if you talk to a college kid right now
It's
in
like a
Europe,
rotary phone.
right, and you try to you try to explain a check to them, they would think it's crazy that we still operate in checks. So these companies are just collecting what's considered this unstructured data, PDF files,
And you're talking about banks. Are you talking about banks in particular, or
banks,
everyone?
banks, healthcare, any organization that has to follow data privacy compliance. They're required to collect all of this documentation. That's a part of HIPAA, that's a part of banking. It's just when you're dealing in complex regulatory environments, they have to collect all this data.
And that means that every single file that you have in all of your servers all have to be put in a way that it would be compliant with all of these rules, but they can't actually see inside many of the files, so they don't even know what's in there.
Correct. And they're just collecting an enormous amount of data, actually duplicating the same amount of data every single time. A lot of it's just redundant. So what we're doing is removing a lot of the redundancy by modernizing their current database, and the result of that is removing a lot of the storage that's required, and it removes a lot of the friction in terms of the IT staff. Currently, organizations have to use an entire DevOps team, like an IT project manager. You need somebody that's experienced in database storage, database design. What we do is we simplify that for an organization, because right now they're dealing with, if you're working with a company like Microsoft or SAP or any of our competitors, you have to deal with almost a dozen applications in order to get your information right as a global organization. So the advantage that we have is providing companies a single source solution, right, that includes 100% of all of their features, and we're on time. Right, that's the advantage of using AI. It's just faster and cheaper to actually deploy a project. It's just software, right, that we're creating.
Yeah. But is this AI, or is this you manipulating AI in a way that it becomes useful? Because AI, artificial intelligence, is biased in its own way, right?
Right, that is correct. Artificial intelligence is biased in its own way, and the way that we combat that
And
is,
maybe explain why
yeah,
artificial intelligence is biased
sure,
as well, because
sure.
nobody's going to know this.
Sure. Actually, MIT has actually participated in a study, and there's a great documentary called Coded Bias, where MIT has spent years basically arguing that artificial intelligence, the algorithms are biased. And just recently, Microsoft, IBM, and Amazon, they removed their facial recognition software from selling it to the police departments because they know their algorithms are biased. The reason why they're biased is that whenever you're handling data, right, unstructured data like PDF files,
Mm-hmm.
also photo images are considered PDF
Mm-hmm.
files. And so um, that file requires human manipulation, right? There's a human actually handling and cleansing that data. And whether it's intentional or not, but whenever you have a human actually preparing that data to train these artificial intelligence systems, that's actually causing bias by interfering with that data preparation. And so, what we've done is remove the human from preparing that data, thus eliminating bias. But
By
also,
creating a new structure within the data, within the, so you're like the cleaner in Pulp Fiction for databases.
correct, correct. Yeah, but also secure. We're also clean, secure, and interoperable with any existing enterprise. So what basically means that organizations don't have to rip or replace any of their current investments.
So would you classify yourself as a database cleansing service?
No, I would classify us as an enterprise software
That's
company that specifically works on databases. I mean, we're working on old architecture. The databases have been around they haven't changed really for 30 years, and the infrastructure that's built on top of them is just adding to the existing workload. I mean, take a look at today, coronavirus, right?
yeah.
Whether we work from home, really moving forward, it's going to be work from anywhere, right? And all that's done for organizations, like if you're using Zoom or any other type of Slack or any other type of cloud-based application, all that's done is add more workload to the enterprises because you have organizations like Amazon, Google, and Salesforce that are moving all these companies into the cloud, right? All that's done is created additional security issues for all of these companies and added workload. So every company that on the enterprise level just has an enormous amount of data that one has to be cleansed, right? Cleaning data is a dirty job. Unstructured data is just dirty, right? That's it within the enterprise. And the reason why it's so dirty is that they're dealing with reconciliation issues. You know, every day the market closes, right? All of this data converges at the same time, right? With all of these companies trying to reconcile the same data, whether you're in banking or in healthcare, right? You're just closing out transactions at the end of every day and trying to track data, right? Which is a huge problem.
Yeah, and then also they've got bombs being thrown at them every 5 seconds because they have employees that have data that they can't read and tell what that data is, and it could be anything and everything. So you have to start from an entirely different place to re-engineer it. And it was also really interesting what you're saying about COVID and people moving at home. This was kind of a dirty secret that people could keep in their offices before, and I don't want to say survive, but by other people not seeing it, even if it cost them a lot of money, they could somehow make it through to the next day. As soon as everybody goes home or people start spending 30, 40, 50% of their time at home, it's game over. You can't have an unstructured database when you've got 30, 40% of your folks who are not based in the same office, same server, same everything.
Exactly, exactly. It just takes too much time to actually handle the data, and whenever you have humans actually preparing data for organizations, you've actually instilled more risk, right? I mean, data is the most valuable commodity that any of these organizations have. So the more data that you have, you're required to have more people actually prepare that data. That's just entering in more risk onto any organization.
So those of you who are listening who are thinking, this is huge. That's why we invested, because we know it's huge. And really, when you look at a venture capitalist and what our job is not to be great motivators. Our job is not to be able to find incredible companies. Our job is not to be able to mentor, teach, train, help, find that investment. They're merely things that we should do as part of our normal day. Our job to be successful is to be able to isolate trends and find out the companies that are best placed to be able to make sure that they benefit and fix the problems that will come up within these trends. I feel what you're doing right now is so huge that this is keeping chief information officers and chief technology officers in large Fortune 500 companies awake every single evening where they believe that they have no solution for this.
No question, no question. They're actually trying to find solutions right now. The only solution that they have currently is just trying to find multiple applications that work. I mean, and when I mean multiple, typically at an enterprise level, you're dealing with 10 or 12 applications at the very least. And the difficult part is that you've got to get all of those applications to work, right, for your organization specifically. And there's no one way to do it. So you have to have a ton of design expertise to actually deploy any of these type of enterprise applications, which even once it's deployed, sometimes it doesn't include all of your features. Why? Because it took too long to deploy, right?
Incredible, incredible. It's a huge story. So, and I know that you're working with one bank right now that we will remain nameless, but you're doing incredible things with them. And then afterwards, you're going to deploy it amongst multiple industries, including in the healthcare space as well. And you've got a tremendous amount of things going on. I do want to touch that, but before I do, because this podcast is listened to by venture capitalists that are looking for follow-on investment, also by CIOs, by CTOs as well. And I think everybody now realizes the enormity of what you've got. Just take us back a little bit to the story about how you got here. Because right now everybody's listening and it's like, yeah, it's a great company. They're doing great. They're on fire. They've got contracts. They've raised money. They're in phenomenal shape. But obviously it must have come from a tougher place. Take us to the beginning.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. So we, at the very beginning, we were asking why, and when I mean why, it was why. Just as a technical person, we were reverse engineering a lot of things, and we were asking, particularly in the healthcare place and healthcare space, why is the system not working, right? Why doesn't everyone have access to healthcare? What,
Healthcare records, right?
what healthcare records, or why is the cost of healthcare so expensive,
Hello.
right? That's why all of those things. And one of the things we
That's, by
discovered,
the way, that question is right up there with why do we exist? It's like,
right?
why does healthcare cost hundreds of thousands of dollars? You know, the two things that are most likely to bankrupt you are sickness and the cost of healthcare that actually goes with it, and university.
That's
But
ridiculous.
healthcare is right up there at the top.
Yeah, if you think of someone that actually has that's a diabetic, right? Vaccine for a 20-something-year-old kid to be insured that has diabetes is extremely expensive. And if you're making $50,000 a year with student loans, how can you afford it? So those are some of the things that we thought we could address. And where we started was with the World Health Organization. And actually, one of the first things we saw was tuberculosis.
By the
And
way, who's we?
um,
How did we come together?
my co-founder and I, Gilles, he's located in Geneva, and the reason why we're located in Geneva is that in Geneva, Switzerland, the most advanced AI projects in the world are happening in Geneva.
Wow.
They're pursuing mental health issues, treatments for cancer. And so that's why we got involved with some of the NGOs like United Nations in Geneva and World Health Organization. And one of the things we saw was tuberculosis, right? There's a vaccine for tuberculosis, but people are still dying from tuberculosis. And we wondered why. And it's because they're poor, right? And so when we reached out and we started talking to United Nations about how we thought our intelligence could actually address some of these issues, the first project they brought back to us was cataloging cancer data, right? Cataloging the actual tumor cells inside, or actually cataloging the molecular cells inside of cancer tumors, damaged cancers. And the reason why is that once your DNA has been damaged by cancer, it's not curable. So one of the things they're focusing on are actually preventative measures. And so our project involved actually cataloging that data, right? And anytime you go into a tumor, there could be 20 million molecules or there could be 100 million. And so the first step is just cataloging that data. So that's how we entered it. It's very technical and very geeky,
Yeah.
but it's just cataloging data so that scientists can
And then you
analyze.
thought, wow, actually, this goes way further than this, right?
Yeah.
And then that was the genesis of the company.
Yes.
And then you brought in some more geniuses, right? Because you didn't have enough.
Yes, we brought in more technical folks, 25 years of experience, all of our architects. We've got a full-time team of 8 people at the moment,
Wow.
and we're working on issues revolving um, around banking and also healthcare. So we're kind of trying to tackle some really big issues around data privacy.
Amazing. What was the hardest challenge that you faced as you launched the company?
Probably the first was really this banking client. I mean, it was just a gorilla of a project. I mean, initially when we started, we thought we would actually go after a small company to get started. But the bank that we're working with is one of the largest banks in the world. They operate in almost 200 countries across the globe. And so actually moving into that project was probably our biggest challenge because it's such an enormous gorilla. I mean, obviously you have faith that your IP is going to work, but when you actually prove that it works, because we're as an edge computing company, everything we do is science based, right? We have to provide evidence based on everything. It's not anything I say. It doesn't matter. We have to provide evidence to be able to prove it, and so that's probably the most difficult part. Is we every step of the way we've got to provide evidence, right?
So it's really interesting because for most companies, of all of the podcasts I've done, it's always, well, our biggest challenge was, when we had difficulties with money, or our biggest challenge was when people didn't believe us, or our biggest challenge was building the app. But for you internally, like the biggest challenge is against the truth of life itself.
Mm.
It's that it's yourselves as scientists coming in, building a platform which is to solve a problem which nobody else can solve. The biggest challenge that you're facing every single day is making sure that you overcome that absolutely enormous problem to build what you were looking to build. And when did you know you had it? Well, when did you got it the first day and you're like, oh man, we gotta find proof and scientific proof. It's gonna be next day, next day, next day, next day. When was that one day when you knew you had a tiger by the tail?
Oh, it was the bank by far. It was That's easy answer because our approval in terms of vendor approval was completed in a month, and when you compare that to Microsoft, it took 18 months for them to get the same approval. And so I knew as a startup, when a company gives you their data, it's their most valuable asset that they own. And I knew once they trusted us with their data, that's when I knew.
It's their baby. Like that's it. They're saying, "Hey, can you mind my baby for the weekend? Because I'm just going away somewhere. But you got to give it back to me in better shape than it was in before."
Exactly. Right.
Amazing. And then, so the company that you bid for, the bank that you bid for, how many other folks were bidding for that bank, and how big were these people? Were they startups like yourself?
No, they were the largest companies, AI companies, cybersecurity companies, AML. There were actually 150 companies that actually competed on the same project.
Boom, baby. That must have felt good though, right? You're up against these behemoths. You're a little David against Goliath,
Right.
and you're going, "Come on, Goliath, I got you."
Yeah.
And Goliath's going, "Sorry, where are you?"
Yeah. Beat them
And you
all.
beat them. And then what do they? I'm sure you weren't talking to them over dinner, but I mean, how did people react to this pipsqueak company coming in from nowhere, just armed with science and nothing else, and getting contract for one of the largest banks of the world? And we're talking a contract which is potentially worth tens of millions of dollars, right? It's a huge contract.
Yeah, it's closer. It's probably closer to 50 to 100 million dollars in terms of the contract. But that's just one bank. But the project that we have will be licensed to additional banks outside of this. So internally, what they said at the bank, they actually didn't believe the results of our report. They thought the report that we generated wasn't true because they've never seen anything that's operated like this. That not only handles You've got to handle internal data
Mm-hmm.
whenever you're dealing with an organization like this. They operate in 200 countries and they have 200,000 employees. So we're handling not only their internal data, but we're also handling external data, meaning that we're building what's called an AI engine that cleanses data simultaneously. And the beauty of that is that whenever you integrate new data into any organization, on the back end, you have to create a query, right? Anytime you're doing any type of modeling or advanced modeling or analytics, you've got to create a query on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
And so by using our intelligence, There's no query, no coding. And what that means is that there's no technical expertise required. So I can put our AI in the hands of everyone within the organization, regardless of their technical expertise. So I could put it in the hands of an academic, a scientist, a researcher, or a humanitarian, and they don't have to have any technical expertise to actually operate and handle the data. And the beauty around humans is that when you prepare data for humans and organize it in a fashion specifically for them, humans are the ones that are going to be able to really innovate and create, right? They're the ones. So that's why we want to make sure that we include humans as part of the data management process and information.
Incredible. And what comes next? So you got the first bank. You're working your way through it. You're doing great. The company has got how many employees now?
Well, just under a dozen.
Dozen employees. So you got some hardcore. You probably have 100+ years of experience just between your engineers, your founders, your partners, and everybody else in there. Like you're now becoming a beast.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. So where do you go to? What happens? What is the rest of the year? Right now we are almost in July in 2020. What does the rest of the year look like, and what does 2021 look like?
Well, we're just at the very beginning. I mean, with the COVID situation, none of these companies can actually operate, and we have a really big tailwind. As I mentioned, Google, Amazon, Salesforce, they're moving all of these organizations into the cloud rapidly. And so it's just the very beginning for us. And I mean, this is going to take a while, be honest with you, just because we have so many opportunities that are in front of us. I mean, what I mean by a while, we have 40 or 50 companies that we're talking to right now that even with the staff that we have, it's going to be hard to get all those projects into production. So right now we're focusing on the recurring projects. We're also focusing on the healthcare space, which is a big priority for us. Cancer research, mental health are big issues that we want to address. In terms of the future, what's important is that we put our platform in the hands of more scientists. Right now we're working with, World Health Organization, um, United Nations, and they have thousands of researchers and scientists. But what's important is that we put our technology in the hands of just a handful of scientists, right? Not the guys that have all the big money and big pockets, but we have a handful of scientists and researchers that have a treasure trove of data that they don't know how to operate or handle it. And so, if I can put technology in their hands, maybe they're able to create something that'll help, right? So that's the whole idea.
Incredible. And then from a VC perspective, so you're going to grow and grow and grow, which is again why we invested, because we knew that was going to be the case. I've personally been on calls with your whole team, and it is insanely impressive, the people that you have on the phone. It's like walking into a Nobel laureate group of folks. And I immediately get to feel like the dumbest guy in the room, but I'm still kind of, I feel like I'm going to leave smarter. Everybody else is going to leave dumber, but I'm going to leave smarter, right? So, but what about on the VC side? You have to need to raise more money for this, right? It has amazed me that you have built a team of people that you've built, that you have brought on prospects and clients with the enormity of the potential revenue that's going to come in from these guys. And you've done it without even hardly mentioning venture capital money.
Oh, yeah. So we actually self-funded the organization, and the reason why we've been able to bring on folks is that the projects that we have, the pilot projects, we're billing our clients $250 to $300,000 just for a pilot project. Now, what's different about our pilots is that we're actually doing the R&D for the client. That's why we're billing that much for the pilot projects. However, we still need additional money from venture capitalists. That's why we're raising capital.
So we're going to take some VC money in. How much are we going to take in?
We're looking at $2 million, but that's to
small amount.
Yeah, that's actually to industrialize the application that we've already built. I mean, we've already done the R&D for it. Like I said, we beat out 150 people on this particular application. That included all the R&D, and so the money that's being invested won't be spent on R&D. It's strictly to deploy an enterprise application globally.
It just occurred to me, and I'm not sure why this didn't occur to me before. It's just while we're sitting here and talking, this investment should actually come from one of the CIOs. Should come from one of the the CSVs, so one of the corporate venture funds. without question. Like if I'm Bank of America, if I'm Wells Fargo, if I'm Bank Paribas, if I'm any of these banks, or if I'm Kaiser Permanente, or if I'm United, like I should want to invest in the future of my databases.
Oh yeah, you couldn't build this application cheaper internally. I mean, just by investing in it, it would be less expensive for you to build it from scratch, and you'd have a senior level team, no question. Yeah,
Yeah,
without question.
absolutely makes sense. That's what we have to go after. What are you most afraid of?
Big guys, right? Crowd strikes, afraid of oracles, the big gorillas, right? Those are the big guys.
Don't they need to be more afraid of you? I understand size. Size causes, yeah, and especially as you're growing and they're huge. I mean, they can do all kinds of things to you, but you also have the opportunity, right? Because you're nimble and you're strong, and because you can actually bring innovation in a way that they can't really do anymore.
Right, and there's no question. I mean, as a small organization, our ability to innovate is much more rapid than theirs. I mean, what's most difficult for us is that we're competing, like we're competing against the big guys. So
Yeah.
right now we have the technical team. We're bringing on the sales team, and we'll bring on salespeople in every city across the globe. I mean, we're a global organization, so yeah, that's the biggest challenge is actually growing the company, maintaining its culture, especially when we're building the organization via Zoom now, where everyone's virtual, everyone's online. And so actually actually getting the capital, expanding the organization, and also maintaining the culture from a global perspective is probably going to be really challenging.
So, and I want to finish with, because it's true. I actually, you made me think of an old phrase I haven't thought of in a long time, which is that when you're competing, to your point with the oracles of the world, is that in many cases they don't need to be better. They just need to be bigger. Like there was that old phrase where people used to say, "You never got fired for buying an IBM computer." Back in the day, right? It didn't matter
Mhm.
if they were in the best. It was just you couldn't get fired for it. So that is happening. But the amazing thing with you, which is incredible for me, is that by you being able to come in, nail one of the largest corporates in the world as one of your first contract bids, it says to me that that's not going to be an issue for you because you've now passed that will it work phase because you've already got that monster company to come on board with you. And so I think it's going to be incredible. I do want to finish with, if we look at, I want to look at what are the potential benefits. This is for all the CIOs out there, all the CTOs out there, and they're saying to themselves, okay, I got GDPR, so I got the privacy thing. I understand. If our data in our organization is not structured, we are vulnerable to privacy issues up the wazoo. And we all get that. On top of privacy issues, what other benefits are there in creating a structured data set within your organization?
Well, reducing data storage for one would
How
be
much can you reduce storage by?
right off the bat at least 30%.
Okay.
That's off your initial database or data storage, any of your data lakes that you have, and then that's currently. And then we also pre-process data moving into the environment. Um, and on top of that, we add a layer of security as
Mhm.
well within our AI algorithm. The third component would be our ability to
And when you say the layer of security, so that's cyber protection. So that
correct.
means from people breaking into your system, it's much easier to break into your system if you have a system which is all over the place with loads of data that you don't even need, and data which is absolutely, I mean, they can expose you and make the privacy thing even worse as well as breaking in. So while if you have a very closely controlled data set, it's much more difficult for people to get in and destroy that.
Yeah, no question. That's regardless of whether it's in a database or within a hybrid container.
Okay,
So,
get that as well. Three huge benefits. Anything else?
um, that's really about it for now.
Yeah, and they just get to run a streamlined business organization, which I actually think all of the other things are huge financial pains. I think most CIOs would be so happy if they could just be in control.
Yeah, right,
Right? This
right.
is like, I'm not waiting for some grenade to be lobbed at me at 4 o'clock in the afternoon for something that I know is in there. It's just a question of which one.
Yeah, unfortunately, most of the CIOs don't know what's in their data. I mean, most of the organizations that are at the enterprise level just don't understand what's in their data currently. And so this is the first time they're able to learn what's in their data set, right?
So I want to finish up by making sure that people get your email address, also your website, and any other information that you have about the companies that you want to see. I do want to put a big pointer out there to all VCs and corporate venture funds as well. This is a tiger by the tail. Database awareness is probably the singular biggest issue within enterprise in corporations today. This is huge. This company is already proven. It is strong. We have invested in it. It has an incredible team, and it's going to go to the sky. So you can also, Michael will give you his information, but you can always contact me here at Brian at Expert Dojo. We are raving fans of CloudNine AI. Michael, email, website, and any parting thoughts?
Yeah, website is cloud9ai.com. And then my email is mb@cloud9ai.com. And that's MB like Mike Brown at cloud9ai.com.
And parting advice for chief information officers or chief technology officers?
Parting advice. Well, best advice I could give you is give us an opportunity to actually show you a demo, because we'll show you the difference and how you can modernize your database really quick. So it's really that simple. The technology speaks for itself.
And sleep at night again.
Yeah, sleep at night. Everything's going to be easy for you.
Thanks, buddy. Couldn't be happier that we invested in you. Looking forward to taking this all the way.
All right, thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
And that's a wrap.
Thanks for joining us. If you love the podcast, please empower your circle by sharing these stories. The Art of Startup War is brought to you by Expert Dojo. And remember, we invest in startups, $50,000 checks. Make sure you apply on our site if you are one of those great entrepreneurs looking to bring your company to the next level. As far as the Art of Startup War is concerned, we are back every single Tuesday at 10 a.m. So remember, check out the new episodes. If you want to find out what the investors think, check out season 1 or 2. But make sure you join us every single week.